Well, the credibility of our live stream continues to grow because we are adding Olympians now. I mean, we're getting to a point where we've got the all-time great Michele Smith, a two-time Olympic athlete, one of the greatest two-way players, if you will, great pitcher, outstanding hitter. Everything about the softball game is all Michele Smith. People ask me all the time, Michele, if I know you, and I say, that's softball. I don't know softball. No, I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Absolutely. I'm honored to be here. I love what you're doing, the cause. So I absolutely very, very honored to be able to share some time with you.
Well, I learned a lot from you because I don't know much about softball. I mean, obviously I played it. I played the game. I know that. But the current sport and the way it's played at the level that it's played, I learned something from you every time. And I always say, I hope somebody's saying that about me when I'm calling a basketball game, because that's what we're supposed to be doing, right? I mean, how do you see it?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, for me, when I first started as a broadcaster, it was very new for me because I was pre-med, so I never studied journalism in college. So I remember my advice the very first time that I kind of got thrown out there. They were just like, just say what you see. And I'm like, oh, okay. And then try to explain it. So a lot of times I really try to explain the sport as if someone who has never played the sport would want to know, well, why is the shortstop playing in this position? And what's the battery doing? And why is the coach calling this particular and run play or whatever? So I try to break it down so that maybe the casual viewer who's never played the sport can better understand it. And then, of course, for the elite athlete who is continuing to watch the game or is played at an elite level, you know, you can dig in a little bit more and give them a little bit of nuggets and perspective.
There were times in my career earlier in basketball where I actually had some people say to me, you know, dumb it down a little bit. I mean, people don't know what you're talking about. You're going too high level into either analytics or jargon that they don't understand. I'm like, what? There's no way in hell I'm dumbing it down. This is women's sports. Like, the product is good. How do you feel?
100%. And why do you think analytics are such a big thing now? Everybody wants them, right? We're starting to get to the point where people want to see the analytics, the exit velocity, for instance, in our sport, or the spin rotation. Why is one pitcher's rise ball so good and they get so many swing and miss versus another pitcher's rise ball that gets fouled off? So, you know, all comes down to spin rate and break, you know, locations and it, you know, so, and the fans want that. They want to know why they're seeing what they're seeing on the field. So 100%. And you know, these are the female athletes are outstanding. So I just think that being able to portray our games, our sports at the elite level that they're being played, it would be an injustice to the viewer if we did not do that.
I'm always fascinated when you start talking about location and spin rate and the velocity and the change up and, you know, the rise ball and all that. I mean, the pitchers, the natural movement of the rotation of the shoulder allows them to pitch a lot more than throwing it overhand. I mean, you're still throwing bat in practice, right?
I could, and I do at times to friends only. Otherwise, I've shut the arm down. Actually, you're exactly right, though. It's funny because one of my shoulders has been bothering me, and it's not my pitching shoulder. So the 30 years I played professionally, the left shoulder is fine. It's the right shoulder from diving for balls or, you know, when the glove arm is extended. But you're exactly right, because it is a underhand. And again, this is granted that your mechanics are good and pure. The shoulder joint is actually meant to go into a circle when your hips are in a proper position. So as long as your mechanics are good, you can throw back-to-back days. And a lot of elite pitchers throughout the Olympics, we've done that. You see it in the collegiate game now. So it is much more natural than the overhand throw, as, you know, obviously baseball pitches. So if you train properly, if your mechanics are good, you can definitely get into a position where you can throw multiple days and quite a few multiple games with a lot of pitches.
So when you start talking about a couple of hot shot names, I mean, I only know what you teach me. So Montana Fouts and Valerie Cagle are two names that I know inside softball. Valerie, because she's at Clemson, and my son Frankie's at Clemson. But talk about those two. And, you know, we're always talking about star power in college basketball on the women's side too. You know, we've got Caitlin Clark and an Angel Reese. You know, what's the equivalent there in softball? Did I hit the right team?
You got the right to, absolutely, because Montana Fouts transcends the sport. I mean, she's just great. She does a lot for young girls off the field, but then also teaching them on the field. They all want to grow up and be like Montana, and she's a great example of the type of person and athlete that really represents our sport so well. And she's phenomenal. She throws the ball over 70 miles an hour. She can move the ball around. She just is a great teammate. That's the other thing too. She's able to share in other people's joy and always spreads the wealth. She has a good game and she thanks her catcher and her defenders behind her. And she's just, just amazing. And then Valerie Cagle is a great example of a two-way player. So she is not only just an outstanding pitcher, she's also an incredible hitter. So she helps her team on both sides of the plate. And Valerie Cagle, again, is one of those athletes who was very good at a young age. She's really matured. She went through an injury last year. So she had that little bit of a struggle last year as a sophomore where she wasn't quite as complete as she was as a freshman. And you know how it is as a sophomore, everybody kind of knows your nuances. They know how to attack you. But she's come out here her junior year and just has been outstanding and really guided Clemson to have the outstanding season that they've had. But yeah, we've got some great names in our sport. Megan Faramo is another one, pitcher for UCLA. I mean, we've got a lot of superstars all over the place. And, we have the superstar team of Oklahoma that hardly anyone can seem to figure out how to beat.
That's the Natty Patty over there, right?
There it is. That is the.
Okay, so do you have the all Smitty team? Like, the two-way players, like Cagle's got to be one of them on the team, right? Pitches and can hit. That was you. I mean, you're a big hitter too. You weren't just an Olympic softball pitcher.
No, exactly. For me, I'm kind of a busybody. So if you're playing pro ball and we have a 6-hour practice, you can only pitch for so long. And so you got to figure out other things to do. So I'd work on my hitting. I'd play a little outfield, a little first base. And, I just love the sport. I love to be on the field. I love to practice, and that's why I played as long as I did. But if I were to say an old all Smitty team, I think, Jordy Ball is another one who's a great pitcher for Oklahoma. She's having a great sophomore year. She was an outstanding freshman. She's, Oklahoma's kind of kept her reeled in, but she can also hit. She'll go in and pitch run at times for Oklahoma. So, she really can do a lot. Shanice Stells for Arkansas is another one of those great players who could probably hit if they needed her to. But, the lineups are so long nowadays that most college coaches are going to try to keep their aces in the circle and on the bench, so that they're not on the base paths potentially in harm's way. Megan Faramo, as I mentioned, is another one. But we've got a great group of freshmen this year that have done an outstanding job throughout the country. So, our sport's in a really good spot, but we've got some amazing pitchers, hitters, and then of course, defenders.
Well, I think your sport's in a great spot. And in many ways, I think you've taken the lead in certain aspects of it. And I'm not going to go into, too much here, but I do want to know from you, like the 9.9 million rating that the women's championship in basketball got this year is quite significant. And I think softball has already established itself as an incredible ratings hit. I mean, how do you see the 9.9 versus, where softball is right now?
Well, that's a massive number. And it just shows that, the viewer wants to watch good athletes and good stories. And I don't think it should be gender specific, but Caitlin Clark, I mean, she was compelling, right? It was a great story. Right. It was, and I think what also helped it too is a team like Iowa, as good as they've been in the past, they weren't this Iowa, right? And because they didn't have a Caitlin Clark type athlete for previous years. So she explodes onto the scene, even though, she'd been on the scene. It's about exposure, right? If you give a great athlete exposure, male or female, they're going to rise to the top. People are going to be interested, and then you create a little adversity with the, the opponents, like who's going to beat them and who do they match up with? And can they beat, the perennial powerhouse, South Carolina? And then you have LSU emerging on the scene. So, I think those are great storylines. And once the media, ESPN puts it out there, I think people start to bite and they nibble on it, and then they're interested and they're hooked, and I think softball's in the same way. We have to create stars. If you look back over sports history, let's just say even the Yankees. I mean, people followed Derek Jeter. They wanted to follow, yes, the Yankees, but they're also very interested in Derek Jeter. So when we can create these superstar women athletes, people get invested in them. and then they want to watch them. They want to know more about them. And I hope that, we continue to do that on the women's side of all sports, basketball, softball, volleyball. I mean, there's just a lot of great athletes out there. And the more we can tell their stories, the more people will be interested and realize that it's just as outstanding watching women's sports as it is men's sports.
I'm curious about how you feel about this, because I don't know if we have the answer out publicly yet about what the NCAA is going to do about the rights coming up for our sports, right? For the bundle of sports that they put together for championships. There's a lot of people talking about separating basketball, letting it stand on its own. I'm sure there's some people that think softball and baseball could stand on its own. Where do you sit, or what idea, if you were sitting there today and you were president for the day, Michele, what would you do with the bundling of the sports rights now, especially on the women's side?
I think what I would do, the sports that have proven that they can stand alone and they can hold their own and they can captive an audience, I think you have to split those off and let them run. I think that there are a group of sports that probably need to collectively stay together so that they get airtime, they get media time. And so I think that you have to decipher what those sports are. I would probably say at this point, it's probably basketball, softball, and gymnastics that would probably do very well selling themselves. And because you could have specific sponsors that are relevant to their sports. And so you should let them run where they can run. And then maybe another group of sports that maybe are starting to grow, but need the continuity of working together for advertisers, even for airtime, because sometimes there's some sports that just don't get enough time yet, or aren't exposure yet, that over the next 5 or 10 years, they will start to build and be able to break out on their own. And so, for instance, maybe that's field hockey, and maybe that's some of the other sports that are starting to emerge and people are starting to cover and want to watch. But I definitely think that basketball should be out. Women's basketball should be out on its own. Softball should be able to be out on its own, because we have a lot of people that come to us and say, hey, we want to sponsor this, but because it's all kind of lumped together, it gets lost, unfortunately.
I agree with you. I've been a big proponent, actually, for 15 years of separation from the corporate partner program, because I do believe that there are women's sports, if somebody tried to sell them, would be able to be sold on their own. Okay, so we share something in common. We both get to work with the famous Beth Mowins. Now, I've worked with her for 26 basketball seasons. We are the longest running basketball television partnership on the air.
That's awesome.
That ESPN or anybody has. Nobody has had in college basketball. 26 years. That's a long time to work with someone. I've been stuck with her for 26. How many years you been stuck with her?
Not quite 26, but pretty long. We have been stuck with each other for a while, definitely since the late 90s. And there were years I was in and out because I was playing professionally in Japan. I would actually buy my own ticket because there was nobody else to call games. I would buy my own ticket to come home from Japan to call the Women's College World Series, just because there was nobody else that could really do it. And I was like, the sport needs to be represented. We need to make sure that the broadcasts are good, so what people are seeing is compelling. And so that was a funny time in my life, and I wouldn't change it. We've got great people, as you know, at the top of ESPN with Meg Aronowitz and Pat Lowry, and a lot of women that are helping promote women's sports. And that's a big key, is that we need women to keep supporting women, and for women to keep pushing that the women's message to the men and up at ESPN and Disney and all these media corporations to really say, hey, this is a great product. It does deserve to be on television. But the BMO factor is real, and we've both experienced it for a very long time.
We're both very fortunate we get to work with her. She's like family to us. And we love her, and we love Hank. The best part about being with Beth is actually not in game. It's after the game.
And what she says in talkback. My only regret is she's a master of the talkback button. My only regret is that I didn't throw her a glove and make her catch for me. I'm sure you guys shot baskets together. I'm like, what was I thinking? I should have thrown her a catcher's glove and said, come on, BMO, let's go. You
would knock her right off her feet if you did that. I know you would. Okay, so I've been politicking for a long time on my side, and I'm going to need your help a little bit. I want to cross over in the booth. I want to do softball with you and BMO. I would be the perfect third wheel in that situation to talk analytics and stuff that the fan at home wants to hear that doesn't have the high level knowledge that you have. You got to help me out a little bit, Smitty.
I will. We got to put together a targeted approach to I guess who would we be talking? Would it be Pat Lowry or would it be Meg Aronowitz? One of them, or both of them together if we can get them in the same room.
That's what we'll do. We'll work on the two of them. But you've been gracious with your time. You've been so philanthropic with your efforts and supporting the game and supporting others around the game. I know we love seeing you at the KEL Cancer Fund golf outing. I'm always trying to beat you on the longest drive because I know you smack the heck out of it. The last thing is 20 years in Japan. I heard you like own Japan. Like you own it. You know everything about Japan.
I loved it. I was very blessed to play 16 years professionally in Japan, won 8 championships and 8 MVPs over there. And really it was because I embraced the culture. I loved it. I 6-hour practice, I was like, game on. I just loved being out on the field. And I embraced the culture. So Mara Nihongo wa karimasu. So I learned to speak the language, and I still to this day can remember some of it, not as much as I used to, but it's a great culture, and a lot of opportunity over there for women, a lot of opportunity now for our collegiate athletes to graduate and then go over and play professionally in Japan, which is great because in the US we're still trying to figure out our professional league. So no, I'm very, very blessed to have been able to go through that. And back to the philanthropic stuff. I always wear shirts, right? Do good. So I don't know if you can read it backwards, but I feel like hopefully my legacy will be more than just how many wins or MVPs I had in my career, or how many gold medals. It's really hopefully the difference that we make, and that's why I love what you're doing, Debbie. I mean, you're such a great example of having a platform and being able to make a difference to people that need help, and that's what I think life is all about. So I feel very blessed to be a part of this with you.
Well, it's an honor to have you. Thank you so much. You were a quick yes, and it was easy for us to be able to bring you on because you're just everything. Your smile, your personality, your spirit, all that will be felt during the 24 hours. So I thank you, Michele, and I wish you well as you finish the college softball season. And you definitely bring a lot to the game, and the sport of softball is very fortunate to have you. So thank you.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you. Good luck with your shots, and I'm going to be donating. So I can't wait to see how everything goes. So thank you again.